Do it.
Just make sure you don't give away any state secrets.
Yes.
Okay. So we just wanted to touch base with everyone, see how everyone's doing, and facilitate some dialogue today about a couple of topics that we've prepared. So we're going to talk about sustainable eating, sustainability in kids, benefits of working remotely and telecommuting, and the art of repair. So I imagine everyone is experiencing some positives and negatives in terms of sustainability while we're going through this unprecedented time that we see grocery stores that you can't bring your own bags anymore. That's sort of the negative, right? Like that's probably not going to change for a while. And so really encouraging everyone to bring paper bag or choose paper bags instead of plastic, because at least you can recycle those. Obviously, we're not recycling plastic bags at the Sustainability Resource Center right now because we're closed. I guess you could hold on to them and bring them to me later, but that doesn't seem very sanitary, so let's not do that. There's also some positives of us not going to work every day and not having to commute in our cars. And so really just discussing today some of the successes and yet some of the challenges that we're facing. Does anyone have anything they want to add before we get started?
I think just some general housekeeping. So keep yourself muted if you're not currently speaking, just so that we can reduce background noise. And then if you have any questions or you want to say anything, feel free to unmute yourself and just jump in, or you can also use the chat as well.
All right, so to begin, we're going to go with sustainable eating to start.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everyone. My name is Cindy, and I wanted to talk about one way that you can be more sustainable when you're eating. And there's lots of different factors that go into this, obviously, but I'm going to focus just on one, and that is going to be reducing food waste. So everything that I'm going to kind of hit on are things that I'm doing myself. So if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to jump in at any time. The first thing I wanted to talk about was tracking and planning. So the best way to reduce food waste is to prevent food from becoming waste in the first place. That rhymes, so it's easy to remember. And I think tracking and planning is really about the intentional and purposeful use of food and ingredients. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. There's a couple of different ways that you can do this. And the first thing I want to talk about is meal planning. And let me just share my screen, and then you all tell me if you are having trouble seeing. Good? All right, cool. So Diana very graciously shared her spreadsheet with us, and that's something that she does at home in terms of meal planning. So you can see here, this is kind of an example of kind of really thinking about what you're going to be making for that week and planning for that. I think that one of the best ways to reduce food waste is, like I said, being intentional with what you're doing. So kind of having a plan for the food that you're going to use and how you're going to use it is a great way to reduce waste. I want to talk about another thing that I personally do, and that's inventory tracking. So this is an example of my journal. In my journal, I kind of keep a list of all of the things that I have in my inventory. I'm really a tactile person, and that's the reason why I do it in my journal rather than, on a spreadsheet. But whatever works and whatever you're comfortable with, I think is great. So let me just stop sharing really quickly. So here you can see it. I kind of have it broken down by pantry stuff that's in my fridge, stuff that's in my freezer, things that I have in my garden, and then I kind of have like a list of potential meals that I could make with that. And I think for me, this really works well because it kind of gives me the flexibility to be like, okay, well, these are all the things that I have, and I know what I have, so the chances of like some vegetables rotting in the fridge because I forgot about them is reduced. So setting meal plans is really kind of like, you could be really flexible with it, or you could be really granular, like I showed in my 2 examples. Something else that helps you too is it helps you see kind of exactly what ingredients you need to buy. So you're only buying what you need and you have a plan for that, and that really reduces the food waste. Another thing I want to talk about, I'm just going to stop really quickly. Does anybody have any questions or comments? No? Okay, then I'm going to move on. The next thing I want to talk about is composting. So giving your green and brown waste a purpose, you can kind of save all of your scraps and throw that into the compost. There's a lot of different ways that you can compost. If you have a backyard, you could do it in your backyard, or you can kind of keep the scraps in your kitchen and kind of collect them. And then usually the city of San Diego does this thing where you can kind of turn in food waste and then you can get compost. I don't know if that's still happening right now, but they have a lot of resources. So the city of San Diego has kind of like, they have a composting voucher. So they will give you a discount for one of 3 different composting vehicles if you have the space for that. So I'm just going to come over here. You can see here they have the Compost Bin Voucher program. They also have a lot of really cool guides about composting and backyard composting. So there's one, here's another one. And I found this to be really, really useful just because composting is a little bit tricky depending on how you do it. There's different ways, obviously. I could do something called passive composting, which means that I kind of just add stuff as I accumulate it. A lot of times with composting, people will kind of build up like a critical mass of that and then just keep that. But I prefer to just add as I go because I don't have a direct need for it right now, so I can kind of let it go longer. And then if you don't have space for composting, like traditional composting, Verma Composting is a really great way to kind of do that in a low space, low budget kind of a situation. Verma Composting really means that you're basically letting worms eat your food scraps, and then they kind of produce this worm casing, which is their byproduct. It's their waste basically, and that's a really rich fertilizer that you can use in the garden. And that kind of leads into my next topic, which is kind of being more self-sufficient. So if you grow your own stuff, and you don't have to do like a huge garden, you don't have to be completely self-sufficient, but little things that you use often like herbs or green onions or scallions, cilantro, that kind of stuff is really, really easy to grow in a container in your home. And then that's, if you're composting, that's a way that you can use that product. I personally find that growing my own herbs is more useful for me in reducing my food waste, because usually when you go to the grocery store, you have to buy like a whole bunch of it. And I find that I can't really go through that quickly enough. So for me, kind of just having my own herbs that I know I use frequently and being able to just snip it off as I go is really helpful for me. And then, sorry, my computer is frozen. Oh, there we go. Something else that I like to do too is whenever I can, I make my own stuff. And like, for example, making bread. I think that's a really great way to reduce plastic waste and packaging waste, and also food waste, because that way you can kind of just make what you need instead of buying it. You're not limited to whatever they put in a package. It's kind of an issue right now that bulk buying isn't really an option. As everybody knows, they've kind of been doing it all for you because of the situation and because of the hygienic standards. So kind of making things at home has been a really great workaround for me. Storing your food properly also is a really great way to reduce food waste. Learning about the proper food storage techniques is so important because it'll it'll basically widen the life that your produce and your dry goods and whatever it is that you have. And so you kind of have more flexibility and you have more time before that turns into food waste. Another thing you can do is preserving your food. So there's lots of different techniques, like you can can or pickle something. I really like fermenting. I make my own sauerkraut and kimchi and all the other stuff that I use on a daily basis. Freezing also is a great way. Bananas freeze really well, herbs freeze really well. And then if you have the means, drying and dehydrating is also a really great option. The last thing I wanted to talk about is reusing and repurposing what we think about as food waste. So a lot of times the kitchen scraps that you have, other than going to the compost or into the trash, you can save that and use it to make more food. So saving vegetable scraps in the freezer and then using that to make a homemade stock is a really great way that I use up my scraps. Another thing is like, another example is Parmesan rinds. So I go through Parm pretty quickly, and instead of throwing out the rind, I'll actually throw that into whatever soup I'm making, and it adds a lot of really great flavor. There's a lot of examples that are similar to that in ways that what we think about as traditional food waste can actually be reused, and you can kind of prolongate the life of that. And then also making conscious choices about packaging. I know right now we're all pretty limited in terms of what we can buy because we're limited to, not being able to bulk buy and what the grocery stores are selling. So what I kind of try to do is think about how I'm going to use that packaging. I mean, obviously you can't avoid it all the time, but when I can, I try to buy things that are packaged in a way that can be recycled. If it can be composted or it can be reused, so like glass jars or anything like that. Cardboard, I think, is a great one. So egg cartons, I usually compost that. The cardboard cartons that mushrooms come in, I compost that as well. And that's basically all I have for you guys today. So if anybody has any questions or comments, I have kind of this list that I made, so I can share that out with anybody who's interested after the meeting. Yeah.
I wanted to share something.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Cindy. Hi, everyone. My name is Teo. I really liked everything that you shared, and I was thinking about for reusing certain food waste, or what we think of as food waste. Something that I've been doing, I eat a lot of fruit, and I never am able to go through all of it before it starts going bad. But I've been using like my papaya rinds or old papaya for making skincare products, like face masks with yogurt. And I didn't realize there was so many ways that you could use fruit for skincare. So I think just getting creative and doing a quick Google search before you're about to throw something away has been really, or can be helpful if you're thinking of trying to be a little more sustainable and trying to let it go a little longer.
Yeah, that's a great way to use up. I mean, I kind of shared what I do, and so it's really great to hear what other people are doing as well, because it kind of broadens the options.
Hi, if I can get my screen share to work, I was going to show you, is that working? Are you seeing a PDF?
Yeah, that's working.
This is what I did on spring break. I don't like to cook, but I realized that was going to have to change. So I put together, pulled down all my recipe books and made myself a book of what things that looked interesting. And then this is a picture of my refrigerator that I've annotated to show some other people what I did with, and these are all magnets. So I was able to print out onto sticky paper, a sticky paper, and put it on some old magnets to cut up. And then I can take, fruits, veggies, whatever, and that corresponding types of recipes down here. And then I move, and then the main reason for making the magnets is so I could move to the top the things that need to be used right away or are getting older. And then move things over to the, I don't have, what needs to be bought area of the refrigerator. And then I haven't gotten quite as organized as a couple other people have about planning ahead. But that's the idea with the days of the week, is that I can also then move the recipe and the ingredients up to that. So for myself as a visual person, this is what works for me.
Wow, yeah, that's really great. I really like the flexibility that you get. I'm kind of like you, and I don't really like to plan too far ahead, because then I'll be like, oh, I planned last week that I'm supposed to have like pasta this week, and I really don't want that. So I think that's a great way to kind of see what you have and what you can make with it and what you need to get.
Is the screen still sharing? Because I lost my main screen, so I can't figure out how to unshare.
Yeah, let me see if I can turn that off for you. We are gonna have to move on to our next topic. So any further questions, feel free to add that in the chat or follow up with me. I'll throw my email in there in case anybody wants to talk afterwards.
Thank you, Cindy. Next up, we have Daniel and Jason to talk about sustainability in kids.
Hello all, everybody hear me okay? Not sure if everybody has kids or not here, but hopefully this will still be useful. Just wanted to share some of the things that I've been thinking about. I have a 6-month-old son, and so I've been thinking a lot about sustainability, and in particular, like just how to manage this current time. So I'm gonna share my screen. Let's see. Okay. There we go. So when I think about our current situation with sustainability, I think a lot of it has to do with the challenges and opportunities from working from home and trying to maintain physical distancing. So some of these things are going to be very similar to some of the stuff Cindy was saying, but you know, I find one of the biggest challenges just right off the bat is it's a lot harder to buy used. That was one of the biggest things we used to do. There were a couple of stores that specialized in like baby gear, and we were buying everything used, and it was great, but they all closed right now. So that's definitely been a challenge. And then just also buying from people, I think, is really difficult. You know, if you want to try to find things from local people, you're just not sure, and you know, just not very clear on what the guidelines are and how comfortable I feel doing that. So it's just been a lot harder to buy used. And at the same time, you know, my son was in care before this, so he'd spend a lot of day in the care. They have a lot of enrichment activities there. For the most part, when he was home, me and my wife just spent time with him. We didn't have to worry about it. But now that he's home all day, and he just started crawling a couple weeks ago, we've had to really like make our space into like an early childhood space, right? I want more enrichment opportunities and activities for him to explore. So my background's in early childhood education, so I have some of ideas about this, but you know, some of that's just reusing real things, but it's also been something I'm thinking a lot about. I don't want him to miss out. You know, one of the biggest things with that is whenever I want to buy something now, it's going to be shipping, and that's, you know, just increases the carbon footprint and waste, as Cindy was saying. It's just a lot more waste. Another challenge is obviously time. You know, balancing working from home and childcare. I just have a, you know, mobile baby, but I know people with kids who are in school are trying to figure out ways to do schoolwork. So, you know, just time and making time for sustainability as part of this, when so much of our routines and our daily lives have really shifted. And Jason, you know, feel free to jump in. I know you have older kids, so. You know, Cindy mentioned this one. This was a big one for me. It slowly started to see it was just those regulations against bulk buying, you know, reusable mugs, reusable bags. I remember when I first started going to the grocery store, I could still take them in, you know, during all COVID. And then the next week it was like, leave them outside. So any grocery buying creates a little bit more waste, and, you know, no more bulk buying was really big. And, you know, just thinking about the increased energy use of being at home, using my computer a lot more. Maybe I would do in-person meetings and my computer would be off. So just using a lot more of our energy, and depending on what your local energy provider is, it might not be many renewable sources as maybe campus is trying to do. So just some of the challenges I wanted to name, and then some of the opportunities at the same time. Like, we do cloth diapering. We've done that from the beginning, and that's been great. There are maybe some concerns about like water, but we are able to do it at scale, I think, which helps a lot. And then definitely reducing all that waste for diapers and wipes and doing our own. I think there's also some health benefits to that, right? I think cloth diapers, children are less likely to get rashes, and my wife also says they just look a lot cuter. So it's just fun to leave him in his cloth diaper crawling around. I think of this one as a big one. It's just the opportunity to develop sustainable habits. I grew up in Southern California, so we've always had water on our mind. And I remember vividly as a kid, like probably second, third grade, being taught about like how to save water. Like they would teach us when you brush your teeth, turn off the faucet. When when you're like doing dishes, you turn it off. So like I noticed this even with my parents who didn't grow up in Southern California. Like when they're doing dishes, they leave the water running, and I go up there and I go, turn it off in between, right? Like have a little thing next to you, because I just learned this growing up, and I just think this could be a chance to develop some of those sustainable habits with your kids, because it really does stick. And I don't even think about it until someone was mentioning it who didn't grow up in California, that they were like, wow, it's like I have to think a lot about saving water. I was like, oh, I don't really think about it a lot. I think it's just a habit now. Something like Cindy was talking about with meal planning gives you a chance to try things like a meatless Monday. Kind of, I think of also like staple foods tend to have like a lower carbon footprint when I was looking that up. So things like rice and potatoes just have a lower carbon footprint. So, doing some of that meal planning, you can think about ways to build in more meals that have a lower carbon footprint, or ways to kind of set some more of those habits, right? Like not making it so that you're entirely reliant on the food. Let me see, I think I went forward here. You're entirely reliant on like meat. I think too, reuse is a big one that I'm trying to do. So reusing any safe items to create real world play environments. So if you have like, things that packaging that you can reuse, I think a lot of this is kind of that cliche that the kids want the box more than the toy that it came in. So, there are a lot of ways you can get creative and reuse some of these things. And I like to do that, and just kind of add new materials, use bins to hide things so that my son has to like crawl around and pull him out of there, and just kind of, ways for him to practice his small and gross motor skills by putting obstacles in his way that he has to crawl around, and, finding things that are safe that I know he can use, not like, glass or anything that he can break, but things that are safe that he can use. And then of course, like also related to the habits, it's just, trying to get your kids involved in cooking or recycling or buying local, the things that you already do to kind of increase sustainability. I think explaining that and talking to your kids and getting them involved in how you're doing that. I don't know if you had some other things you wanted to add here, Jason.
Yeah, just a few things. My kids are a little bit older, so it is a little bit different, but just the 3 R's that reduce, reuse, and recycle. The biggest challenge definitely for us is, like you said, the reuse aspect, because we depended a lot upon Craigslist, OfferUp, Baby Go Round, those type of places. You can share all this stuff, and all of it's really like new. It's like new product. So that's probably been the biggest change for us. But we've really been focusing on just reducing, just buying the essentials that we really need. And that's kind of, because you do have to buy a lot of it online. And, so with Amazon, with the packages and all that type of stuff, it is really essential to really figure out what the essentials are for the kids, for the family, to get through this time. So those are the main things we've been doing. Also just really getting out, walking instead of using the car, bicycling, just doing that rather than hopping in the car and going places that you really don't need to go. So those are the main things that we've been focusing on in our family.
Yeah, and that's like just some, wanted to think about some activities that can teach children about sustainability. So of course, some of the biggest ones are just those neighborhood walks. You could turn them into nature walks. Biking is great, right? Because again, you're setting long-term habits when you're thinking about biking. This might be things that kids want to do in the future. Planting a garden, you know, I think we talked a lot about composting, which I think is great. I always like to share this story. My wife's family had a compost bin in their backyard, and she, her family, or I guess she did, she thought of her worms as her pets. They were her pet worms. So just, you know, like kids actually get pretty excited about this stuff, and they can really learn a lot from that. There's some activities you can do just to teach kids about the water cycle. I think is really important in Southern California to think about how water, just our water use, and also how the water cycle works and where water comes from, same way we would do with food. And then, you know, just other ideas that people have, wanted to leave it open. I think we've only got a couple minutes here, but if people had some ideas, you can throw them in the chat, or if you want to share some kind of towards the end here, we can do that too. But just some ways to, as you're working from home and maybe you're already doing schooling with kids, some ways you can incorporate some sustainable topics into that. And then just some final thoughts as we wrap up here. You know, it's really hard. I think that's the biggest thing I'm always aware of and trying to tell people is like, don't pressure yourself to try things that are unwieldy, that are unmanageable. Like just start small, do things you can do. It'll all add up. You're building these long-term habits, and it's okay to, you know, to mess up here and there. It's going to be harder now than ever, but celebrate your successes and share your challenges. You know, whenever I have something, people I know on my team or my family, just kind of trying to talk about the things that we're doing that are working and the things that are really hard, and maybe getting new ideas for how to manage things. So just want to point out too, a couple things in the chat here. Look up Artform, a creative reuse place on Adams Avenue. Oh, good. They've been putting together art packs for kids. That's great, especially a local one. Thank you for sharing that, Rachel. So I will.
Two things to do with the kids as well is also there's the tide pools that you can go to, and there's also the red tide right now, which is a really cool educational experience with bioluminosity.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Jason and Daniel. Next up is Diana with working remotely and telecommuting. I think you might be on mute.
There we go. Hi, there we are. So that'll be hard to follow up. Those are two great presentations. And I appreciate Daniel and Cindy's insight into both those topics. So again, you know, feel free to engage, keep adding stuff to the chat. We got this recorded and we're taking some notes. So we'll be sure to push some stuff out. We're going to try and have some time at the end for questions. We'll see, hopefully. So some of what I wanted to talk, so I actually, when I first came on, I've only been at the university about a year. When I first came on board, one of the things that I wanted to be able to do was telecommute. And I found there, you know, I asked for that, and I got some resistance to that, which some people may find, you know, there is stipulation for telecommuting written into or codified somewhere, but I don't think in practice that it was necessarily pushed as hard as that could have been. So you know, again, the environment being what it is, yes, we all know COVID is happening. It's not great, but we're trying to focus on the positives of this. And so for me, I am now completely working from home, which, especially for me, I found, and I kind of knew this was going to happen, but I feel like I'm, for instance, I have reduced stress. I have more time to do things. I'm increased productivity. One of the other benefits that I find is a real irony is that I actually talk more to my supervisor now than I did when I was actually at the office. So, you know, with those connectivity tools that we have at our disposal these days, whether it's Zoom, which we're on right now, and we're actually moving to MS Teams, and we're going to be using that fairly exclusively. And then just, you know, having that check-in time and being able to stay connected with those people. We actually There's a few people who set up some water cooler talks in our department so that you can just kind of join or not as you see fit, like whenever you have the time, just to talk to your coworkers, and that's been good. Some of the external benefits, for instance, and I'm sure many of you have heard a lot of these pros in terms of the environment, right? We've reduced measurable GHGs by not driving as much. We are using less energy, less water. We're not recycling, or we're less recycling, less waste from the university. So yes, we've all heard that budgets are being cut, and there's a lot of, we're hemorrhaging money from the medical side because they can no longer do elective surgeries. And I don't think you can fully recoup that by having these offsets of like, we're not using as much energy, water, and pushing stuff into the landfill. However, there are some benefits to that. And so when we look at how much energy is being used, but then also how much, that reduction, and then our air quality has improved in most cities. I mean, again, this may be a short time, but so, and I've certainly done some research. I have, which again, we've probably all spent more time on the internet looking up COVID-19 over the last 2 months, and we know more than we should. But so there are some, there's the GHG emissions. 911 calls have been reduced now, 25 to 45% in some cases. So, people in general, in terms of driving and accidents, are safer. We've got, and this touches on what Cindy and Daniel both said, more people are gardening. So I actually got a voucher from the city to get a compost bin. And then I called Dixie Line and they said, oh, we don't have any. We used to only get like less than 10 people who would do this like a month. And now we're out of them every week. So they said, call back at the end of the week and see if we have any left. So like people are getting into that. The other thing I found that I even considered was fostering pets. There's a bunch of places that will no longer accept applications because they had so many people applying for pets. But there are agencies out there. I actually have a girlfriend who got like an older dog, like they consider over the hill. But she's like, there's still plenty of those types of animals that need like special care, special needs. And so that those opportunities are out there. And so really, the big kind of push for me for the future, and I am encouraged because my director has now stated a couple of times that like, hey, look, we've proved that telecommuting can work. And I said, yes, you are right. It can work, So I did a little research on how do we carry this forward? Like what are some, if you do like it, if this is something you want to do, which a lot of people do and a lot of people can, how do we continue this momentum and carry that forward because of all of these positives? And so, like I said, I had a few great websites that I looked up. And of course, a lot of that, what I mentioned before is that I am more productive. I am more in contact with my manager. I do have more time to, for instance, and I think part of that is to work out so that I feel healthier. I don't get sick, and I don't take sick days. I mean, I don't know how many sick days I had, but that last year, but there was a few. And I actually, prior to working from home, I was actually taking transit every day, which I do live in Old Town, so the transit is right there. However, where my building is in relation to where I get dropped off, so it could take me an hour to get to work and an hour to get home. And so that's 2 hours a day of commuting. Sure, I break it up with walking or maybe even running sometimes. But that's a lot of time to be concentrating on commuting, and it's stressful. So any place that we can reduce that, I think makes us more productive and happier people. And ultimately, I think that that's what most people want. So that's kind of my presentation. Short and sweet, but feel free if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or even if you have leverage that you think that, oh, if you talk to your supervisor and give him this kind of information or this kernel of incentive, that would help perpetuate that conversation in terms of working from home. So thank you. Let me know if you have any questions.
All right, thank you, Diana. And now Kate is going to talk to us about how to repair things.
All right, well, hello everybody. My name's Kate, and yes, I'm going to round off our roundtable today with just a short and sweet chat about the art of repair. So with the COVID virus going around, I don't know if has anybody been impacted by their ability to get things fixed around their home? Some of my family members have. My aunt, her pool broke, and she's over 70, and she's like, I can't have a repair person, coming to my house and potentially getting me sick. So she's trying to repair her irrigation and her pool by herself. So it made me realize that perhaps other people, maybe some of you are experiencing this too, and kind of how do we navigate some of the challenges, but also, some of the opportunities of this time. So real quickly, I'm just going to talk about, let me see, 3 things. One is safety, and I'm trying to share my screen here. And so safety, some tips, and then just some alternatives. What can we do in the cases when we can't get things fixed? So let's see if this is going to work. Nope, of course it's not. Sorry, technical difficulties, everybody. Let's try this instead. So let's see. So of course, no talk about repair would be complete without a little bit of safety. Please use your PPE or protective equipment, everything from your eyes to your toes to your skin. Use those gloves, those safety glasses, protect your hearing if you're using loud equipment. If you're trying to fix something, leave it to the pros. So for example, I have a bicycle, and I might be comfortable changing a flat tire or changing out my chain or something, but if it comes to something like a wheel hub or my brakes, I'm probably going to use that to someone who's done it, who does it 100 times a week, right? If you are working with a piece of machinery that, anything electrical that has chemicals, that's flammable, again, those are things that are probably best left to a pro. My personal philosophy when I'm fixing something or attempting to fix something is do no harm. So if I have a pretty good amount of confidence that I can, try it and not make it any worse, I go ahead and do it. But if it's potentially going to make the problem, even harder to fix, I move on, and I try and replace it in a gentle way, recycle it, or find somebody who knows more than I do. And of course, common sense, keep your pets and your kids safe. And during this time, don't take unnecessary risk, follow the public health orders. So if you're new to the art of repair, I'd say start small, right? Build confidence, gain a skill here and there that enables you to take the next step in your journey of learning to repair things. One example from my week was that I fixed my crisscross shredder. I was very excited because it was completely jammed, but I got in there with after unplugging it, being safe and wearing safety protective equipment, I got in there and was able to unjam it and get the metal teeth to realign properly. So I was very excited about that. So see, that gave me confidence to try, something in the future. Another thing that can give you confidence is talking to people that have been in this situation. They have repair experience, or they have a similar piece of equipment to what you do. So that might be somebody in your household, a close friend, You can even go online to websites, and of course, the joy of ebooks right now, right? So go onto your county library website or your city of San Diego website, and just so many great resources through the library. After you're done watching your how to fix it video, one of the best ways to get your parts is just order it online, right? And I'll show you a couple websites in a couple of minutes where you can find parts. But if you know that there are some handy neighbors perhaps living near you, or you have some family that might be able to get you, specialty parts, maybe you have a gardener or a woodworker in your circle, that's probably a great resource to go to as well. And the SSN team and I, we were talking about this earlier, and we thought, well, yeah, we know that there's a lot of, group exchange or, buy nothing groups right now, but unless it's kind of a small group that you trust, we're kind of thinking right now that it's best just for safety reasons to kind of keep it small. And if you're going to be trading objects or borrowing objects from other people, materials, try and impose that kind of quarantine of your object. So have someone drop it off and leave it near your front door or on your side patio, and just let it sit for a day or 2 or 3 depending on the material, and just be safe. And if it's not a rush, it's not a big deal, right? So does anybody have questions about these quick tips before we take a look at some specific websites? Questions? Okay. I'll try and keep this short so that we have time for just kind of general questions at the end. So here are a few websites that I find helpful when I'm thinking about how to repair things. And you're welcome to put in the chat or email us if you have other favorites. We'd love to hear about them too. We can even put them on the SSN website for people. So one of the repair things that I was encountering recently was some flooding. We had all that rain about, was it 3 weeks ago now? Just tons of rain. And a friend of mine had lots of water gathering near the edge of his house, and we were trying to figure out how to divert the water. So what did I do? Of course, go off to the internet. How do we fix this problem? And I came up with this French drain result. And I got so excited. I'm like, what's a French drain? That sounds excited. Can you eat a croissant at the same time as you're installing your French drain? That would be great. So I just got to say, WikiHow. I don't know if anybody loves WikiHow as much as I do, but I love WikiHow. Like, there's so many great suggestions on there, and they have visuals. So they have diagrams and lots of safety things. And I just feel it's kind of a really plain language kind of site. So I encourage a quick browse of WikiHow, at least to get yourself kind of oriented in the repair landscape. There's a bunch of other do-it-yourself sites, or kind of, as Cindy was mentioning earlier, kind of self-reliance type sites are another great resource out there. Ones like our good friend Mother Earth News has lots of information about do-it-yourself type projects, and you can find out information about how to use specific tools. You can make your own tool belt, apparently. So just lots of great things like, oh, I don't have this or that on hand. The internet, we all love the internet, don't we? There are some other longtime trusted resources, such as this one, Family Handyman Magazine, which now has a great extensive website. And like I said, videos for me as a visual learner. Okay, well, don't look at that video, but there's lots of other videos. And like I said,
hey Kate, it's Jen. I think we're only seeing your home screen.
Oh no, home screen.
Yeah. Because I think when you share your screen, you select which frame you're showing.
All right, let me stop it and start it again. All right, everybody, how's that? Is there a do-it-yourself website? Oh, bummer. Okay. Let me see. Sorry. So all this fun things about WikiHow, you guys didn't catch any of that, right?
No, but you were very entertaining.
Oh, I apologize. So embarrassing. All right, well, we'll cut this from the recording, right? Okay. So quick recap. WikiHow, love it. Mother Earth News, great for your self-reliance needs. Family Handyman, projects, videos, do-it-yourself inspiration. There are, of course, specialty websites out there for, if you want to get, you have just specific questions. There's this one, Fix It Club, which is pretty great. There's not a bunch of ads or that I've found on here. It's just kind of a basic kind of community grown website. Find your favorite specific website on how to fix things. Bike Ride or Park Tools are a couple of great bicycle ones. Again, if it's not safe for you to fix, take it to a pro. And then of course there's specialty websites online where you can order parts. So, your washing machine broke and you can put in your model number, your part number, and hopefully you can figure out, what parts you need to order. So, yeah, so that's pretty much all I wanted to say, except the big question, well, what if I can't fix it myself or with the help of my family or friends, right? So let me, here we go. So three workarounds I'd say are: one, is there something else that might work where you don't have to, where you don't have to actually go get something? So for example, a friend of mine recently wanted to put gas into, oil into his car. He was trying to do an oil change, but he had loaned his funnel out to a neighbor and he didn't have one. So what he did instead was he took a bottle, that he had on hand, and he just cut the top off and made it into a funnel. Just real easy. So just be resourceful. You guys are all smart. Is there something that you can make, with the materials on your hand? And then lastly, if it's not an immediate rush, something like a furnace comes to mind right now. Is it something that can wait, a month or two, where you can get your expert in there, or you can get to the store to get your parts. So that's it. Sorry. Let's wrap it up so that we have a couple minutes for questions. But does anyone have any? Well, I guess at this time, Jen, we'll just kind of open it up for thoughts or questions or stories that anybody wants to share.
We can be the support group for anyone who's feeling frustrated about things. So please feel free to just share anything that's on your mind.
Yep. Just what I was going to say, Jen. Yeah, that's what we're here for, right? It's like, this is an environment. We want to build a community so that you guys can stay engaged. And if you have questions, just reach out. That's what we're here for.
I have a question, kind of comment on Cindy on the meal planning. And I was wondering what people thought about, because when you're doing the meal planning, you're usually planning like 1 week out. At least that's how we kind of work. But we're trying to not go to the stores very often. So are you able to successfully meal plan like 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, minimizing going to the store like twice a week or so on?
Yeah, definitely. So what I do, I don't actually meal plan as in like I set I'm so sorry, there's very noisy, but I set a set menu or anything like that. I don't do that. What I do instead is I kind of work off of my pantry staples. So I kind of know the kinds of things that I like to eat. So I like to eat a lot of chickpeas. I eat a lot of tofu. I eat a lot of things like that. And so I kind of just have all of that tracked. And those things I can usually buy them in bulk. And then what I'll do is I kind of work around what do I already have and how can I use that. I make a lot of substitutions. I'm very flexible with kind of what I have during the day. So let me just bring up my journal again. So here you can see like I'll list like, okay, in my pantry right now, I have lentils, black beans, I have powdered milk, corn, things like that. And then I'm kind of like, okay, I can use all of these ingredients in different ways to make these different combinations of meals. And then when I go to the grocery store, I kind of just stock up again on those basics or those staples. And usually I can get enough that I really don't have to go to the store, you know, every week or so. I usually go every 2 to 3 weeks. And if anybody else has any comments, I'd love to hear what you're all doing, or if you're thinking about doing anything.
I had already started using Imperfect Foods, which is delivery service on an every other week basis that they specialize in imperfect foods that can't be sold in the grocery store because they're off spec or have a little bit, you know, don't look perfect or whatever, and overstocked items. And it's been working very well, and I was very relieved to have that set up already because at the beginning of this, when it was very hard to get into any kind of program of home delivery, I had that going. And I do also have another question for somebody on the sustainability staff eventually.
Yeah, please feel free to go for it.
One of the things on my to-do list is the green certifying our office, and I read on the website that service was still available, and sent off an filled in the email to ask to work on that, and that was probably 3 weeks ago. I haven't had a response. So I was wondering if that was truly still happening or who I could contact.
That would be me.
Okay.
Yes, it's still happening.
Okay.
I don't know why you haven't heard back from someone. We do have one student who's managing the program.
Okay.
It used to be a team of students, and now it's just one, so that might be why. We are hosting our annual Sustainability Award Ceremony virtually, which is a lot more work than when we used to hold it in person, mostly because this would have been the 5th year that I was hosting it, and it would have been, just sort of seamless because we'd been doing it for so long. So we're trying to get offices certified by next Friday. So it could be maybe that he was putting you on hold for once we get past that, but I can follow up with him when we get off this call and have him reach out to you.
Thank you. Do you want me to put my email address in the chat, or?
No, I can see your name. I'll find you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, anyone else who wants to get their office or lab certified, please do. Anything else?
We have just a few minutes left, so feel free to stick around and ask any additional questions or comments or chat with us. If you guys want any of the information or resources that we showed today, feel free to reach out to us. And yeah, it was really great to see all of you and to be connected during this time. Hope you all stay safe.
And if anybody has ideas for next month's meeting, things that you'd like us to develop a presentation or a talk around, we'd love to hear what your needs are at this time.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Good job, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
All right, bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.